Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Tinnitist TV. Today I am talking to Chris Cresswell of the Flatliners. You know, being in a relationship for 20 years is easier said than done. Being in a punk band for 20 years with all the same members, next to impossible. But the Flatliners have managed to pull it off. Formed back when they were all still in high school, and yes, they named themselves after that awful 1990 horror movie. The Toronto foursome began as a ska-laced outfit, but quickly branched out, eventually crafting a sound that's anchored in punk, but not bound by it. Their just released sixth album, New Ruin, is the culmination of all those years of evolution. It's a powerful, pointed, polished work that fuses propulsive tracks and topical lyrics with sing-along melodies, sharp hooks, and big anthemic choruses. Just before heading back out on the road, singer-guitarist Cresswell got on the Zoom to talk to me about celebrating their anniversary, the unique circumstances behind New Ruin, and how he feels about that band name after all these years. Enjoy. Chris Cresswell of Flatliners, thanks for taking the time to talk to me today. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Hello. Yeah, nice to meet you too. Thanks for having me.
Well, like I said, my pleasure. Congratulations. I see it is your band's 20th anniversary.
Yes, it is somehow. It doesn't really make a lot of sense to us, but it's flown by, so it feels nice. Yeah.
Oh, I was going to ask, does it feel more like 2 years or 200 years?
I guess like certain elements of it feel like it's been forever and ever, when you kind of stop and think back of like all the times on the road and everything, like it's a lot of time logged, but at the same time, yeah, like I've known all these guys pretty much my entire life anyways, and we started the band so young that like all of us turned 35 this year and the band turns 20 because we started
Oh,
so young, so it just kind of it's confusing to be at the 20-year mark kind of,
yeah,
yeah.
sure. Well, I think I was also going to commend you on the fact that you have maintained the same lineup for 20 years. To me, I think that's maybe an even bigger achievement than just being in a band for 20 years. It really says a lot about you guys as people, I think.
Well, thanks, man. I think it just stems from the band only works if the four of us are all in it and are all there for each other. And that's kind of what we've been, like all these years. Like you learn a lot about people when you play in a band together, especially when you travel a lot together. And we've been doing that for so many years now that there's almost this like telekinesis thing that we can kind of do if we're on tour and someone's having like a harder time and they need a little space, or while we're making music and there's like just like a telepathic kind of cue given that everyone can kind of pick up on. It feels good that we've gotten to this place all together, because I mean, i think if 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 we were in a position where so like one guy said, I can't really do this anymore, I don't know if the other three would do it. I don't know.
Wow. What else would you do for a living?
I mean, I think we would all still play music. I would definitely still play music, but I just there's such a strong bond within this band and the four of us kind of doing this together that I think that's maybe what makes it special. I know that's what makes it special for us, and
Right.
maybe that's what makes it special for other people who enjoy the music we make together. But yeah, I think I am hopelessly addicted to making music, so that's what I would do.
Fair enough. Fair enough. You mentioned traveling together. You guys have been on tour again for the last couple of months after a couple of years off. What's it been like getting back up on that horse? And is it even the same horse, or is it a completely different horse at this point?
It's I mean, it feels great. It feels freeing and liberating, and we're grateful that we have the opportunity after all that time to get back to it. Like we decided to take 2019 off from touring just because we'd never done that before. So we thought, yeah,
Good
let's take a
timing.
year off. Yeah, I know. Yeah, and then we thought, okay, cool. Like we'll take a year off finally. After at that point, it would have been, I think, about 16 years in. I mean, and also like, I mean,
Wow.
probably 13 years into like the really heavy touring years kind of stuff. So we thought, yeah, let's take a year off and then we'll come back in 2020 and like do an anniversary tour of a record and then make a new record. And obviously all that, fell by the wayside. But I think all that time, like 1 year off becoming basically 3 years off, really allowed for each of us to, first of all, like I know life was different for everyone, but have a life outside of the band for a bit, which I think in turn gave us all perspective on what we wanted to do when we were able to hit the road again. And like, once we got together to make a new record, it felt really special, man. I think probably most bands and most artists and everything like in our position felt that way. It just felt like because everything was kind of taken away and kind of, put on the back burner for so long, like when you're finally able to do it again, it made me feel like myself again, and I think it made the rest of the guys feel like themselves in part as well. And I mean, now touring the new record, like we're so proud of the new songs and the new record, and then to kind of combine that with our 20th anniversary, like there is like a new energy to everything. And like, I mean, honestly, like there feels like there's this new kind of like power among us. I think we're all just like all steam ahead. You know what I mean? So it feels, it's palpable. I think to me at least, when we're on stage together, it feels like things are hitting right.
And making up for lost time, I guess, is a big part of that.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I remember the first show I played back after the whole break. I was like terrified. I was super anxious. I thought I was going to forget every note. I thought I was going to forget every word. I was so scared. And then the first note, it just like everything just exploded in complete euphoria. And I had to kind of like slow down a little bit because I was like getting very winded. And I was like, yeah, I gotta pace myself here. So it was really like full throttle out of the gate. Yeah.
So the first two shows were like Ramon sets, like 18 songs,
Yeah.
15 minutes kind of thing. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so let's talk about New Ruin, which has also
Sure.
been out now for about a month. So you've got a little distance on it, a little hindsight, a little perspective, and you've been playing these songs live. How do they feel now? I mean, what do you think about the album now, with even just this slight bit of remove from it being out there and people having heard it and it not really belonging to you anymore,
That's true. It is now. Now it is everyone's. It's always exciting having that like that secret, for so long. We don't typically, reveal that we're recording a record while we're recording a record, just because sometimes it can take a while for it to come out. So I feel like it's teasing your people that are interested, and then maybe they're not going to hear it for a while and they maybe even forget all about it. So we like to keep it a secret. And then, now it is everyone's. And we've been so like overwhelmed with just like such a positive response to the record, which we're so lucky for, especially this like deep into our band's career at this point. I feel lucky and very grateful that people are still like listening to our music, still excited when we put new music out. I think maybe over the years I know over the years we've gotten into the habit of kind of putting out a record every once in a while. So maybe that's part of the excitement. It's definitely part of the excitement for us. The main reason is that we don't want to rush things. We want to kind of work at our own pace. We want to make sure that when we put something out, it's worth it. It's worth people's time to even invest that 38 minutes or whatever it is to listen to a thing. You know what I mean? People don't have much of an attention span anymore. So we want to make sure it's worth it for everyone, but that comes after it being worth it to us. You know what I mean? And us being just extremely happy and just proud of what we've made. So yeah, man, like I don't know. I'd say this every time, but I think that's why we're still a band, is that I think our new record's our best record. I mean, everyone says that,
right?
but you have to, yeah.
If you didn't, then why would you make it?
I know it's cliche. I know it's kind of hack, but at the same time, like I honestly believe that's why we're still making music, because every time the four of us get together to make something, we're not really like explicitly trying to outdo ourselves, so to speak. It's just that we want to make sure that like what we're doing has our complete undivided attention. Like we're working overtime on this stuff. Like I'm the person still waking up in the middle of the night, like an idea. And then I just kind of have to, you know what I mean? Like when I get into that mode, it just is completely consuming. So, I mean, really to answer your question, like it's been honestly the last few months of like the lead up to the record coming out and putting singles out, then now it coming out and having been everyone else's for a month, man, it feels incredible. Like I don't remember another time where it felt this good, and I know that maybe there was a time where we put a record out that was maybe more impactful with fans or people learning about our band or whatever, because I know time is kind of, it's all subjective, but I think that this time just feels the most exciting to us in the band, and I think maybe it has something to do with the 20th anniversary and, like I said, being so deep in our career that it just like it's really sweet of everyone to still give us a shot. Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah. Are these songs and recordings that you guys have been sitting around for years, or is this more recent stuff? Because a lot of bands, I talk to them and they go, well, actually, we recorded this album in 2019 and we were going to put it out in 2020. And then, so it's been sitting in the can for 2 years.
I know a lot of bands did. I mean, a lot of bands did both, right? A lot of bands had a record ready to go and wanted to wait. A lot of bands just put it out. And I mean, who knows what's right or wrong? I mean, I'm happy to say that like we were able to make really great use of our time during the couple of years when we weren't able to tour by writing this record and then recording this record. So we made this record about a year ago.
Okay.
Yeah. Like end of summer. Yeah, end of summer 2021, we secretly tucked ourselves away for a little while and made this record. And yeah, I mean, like the songs, there's always some songs even a shred of an idea, like part of a riff, part of a lyric, whatever, that comes from the last record. And our last record came out 5 years ago. So, I mean, there were definitely some bits and pieces still lying around that we never really got to on Inviting Light. But the majority of everything was written, starting probably like the summer of 2020.
Okay. Did the downtime have an impact on your songwriting process? I mean, I know obviously you had more time to to let something sit and then come back to it and rethink and all that, but that can also be kind of a trap because you can end up second guessing yourself into oblivion, right?
So absolutely. And that's what so many artists do as well, right? It's like just as much of your job is exactly. Demoitis is very real, and just as much of your job is to write and perform and whatever. It's also to overthink. So I mean, I had a lot of fun working on these songs in a time where like it was like, any tiny amount of fun was like so needed, everything changed for everyone in, no matter what you do for a living, no matter where you live, whatever, everything kind of changed. So it was nice for me to still have that constant thing in my life of like, okay, well, I can write. And for the first time in a really long time, instead of kind of lyrically writing about like what was going on in my immediate life and my immediate surroundings and those surroundings of the people immediately surrounding me, it was the world, at large, because of all the just complete, I don't know, just dumpster fire of, a couple of years there. So it's been embarrassing to be a human being, in my opinion, to see how everyone treats each other, to see how everyone treats themselves and how they treat the planet. And I had all this time to sit around and really like learn about and read about and listen to what was happening in the world, and then kind of like let it all gestate. And then I, would kind of write the lyrics based on like how it was all making me feel. I'm no expert in any of these things I'm singing about. It. These are just my opinions, but it's a really angry record because of what was happening in the world. It was a very angry time, a very frustrating time to live through. And I mean, through that, because there's always times where like sometimes the lyrics come first or the melody comes first and then the song after. Sometimes it's the opposite. So the main difference of songwriting, I think this time, is aside from that lyrical note, would be like, really, like I had a conversation with the guys in the band like early on that I had all these ideas that were pretty like fully thought out, like I was lucky during this time that I couldn't really turn it off. Like I was very, like I became obsessed with just kind of like working on this stuff because it was what I had to get me through all this crazy stuff that's going on. So I asked the guy, I kind of got the guy's blessing to, send them like pretty thought out full demos of songs, including like MIDI drums and bass lines and stuff like that all of which could change, but like, and I'm like, I don't know why, like, it's ridiculous for me to send like MIDI drums to our drummer Paul because he's an amazing drummer, but just to get like the like the solid idea forward to the guys in the band, and they were all for it. And then so it just gave me all this kind of extra work to do, but it was really fun. So there'd be like like days on end where I'd like barely sleep and just be like obsessively working on songs just to get them done, just to send them to the guys. And we did it like that. Like we had like kind of chunks of time where I would send like 3 or 4 or 5 songs at a time, and then get feedback, and then we would just kind of it added up to many songs that we kind of sat on, and then we pick and chose like which ones we wanted to put on this record. And then we finally, all 4 of us, got in a room after almost 2 years of not being together. That was the longest it had ever been. And then we got into like how to make it all really sound like us. And we did that for like a week, and then we recorded the record. So it, like, once we got together, it was quick. It happened fast. We had all this, lucky for us, because we don't all live in the same city. It was we had, like, technology to help us kind of connect the dots to get us ready for that. It was cool.
So what happens to all those orphan songs? Are those the bits and pieces that will kind of filter into the next album now?
Yeah, that's usually how it works. You know what I mean? We always kind of overwrite. We like to be over prepared, and this record was like probably the most prepared I think that we ever were going into a studio. Yeah, but it's always nice to have like more than you need, is at least where we're coming from, just because it's terrifying going to a studio with like 8 songs. You're like, well, we're trying to make an album, so
I don't hear a single.
What do we do? Yeah. So we like, and I mean, and that was also the benefit of having all that time, is that we had all that time to write. So,
is that an approach you would like to take again in the future? I mean, obviously, it's harder when you don't have all that block of downtime to devote to it. But I mean, even to take a more, instead of just doing it all in the room together at once, to do more like what you did this time. Is that a way you think you'll work again going forward?
I mean, I think I'm lucky that I have really supportive friends in the band that like were into that idea. It's a little our approach is a little different every time. Like for Inviting Light, we wrote a lot of it like in the room. A lot of it, like, someone would come with a pretty solid idea, but we would like work out that pretty solid idea in the room, like kind of bit by bit between tours and maybe even on the road a little bit. But we don't write a lot on the road. So now that we're touring again, it does create like, a bit of a disparity with like your time in like how much you could really like spend. Like at soundcheck jamming the same part of a song over and over again, you're gonna drive everyone crazy. You're gonna drive everyone that works at that club absolutely crazy. Like, and we don't want to do that to anybody. I don't want to do that to myself. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I know that like for the last 3 records before New Ruin, we've always had extra songs. You know what I mean? We've always been in that mode of like over preparing and over writing. The process itself for the next one, we'll see. I mean, it worked this way, like this time, really well. But that's not to say that we can't find another approach for the next one to make that, new and exciting.
You find one that works for that time, right?
Yeah.
You kind of touched on this, but I wanted to go a little deeper into it in terms of the evolution of your sound over the years. I mean, you started kind of at point A, and you've definitely progressed with every album and gone off into different places. And I think this one is kind of, in many ways, I agree, it's your best album so far. And I'm wondering how much of that growth and evolution has just been kind of, what's coming naturally, and how much of it has been you guys maybe consciously wanting to punch above your weight and raise the bar every time out.
I think that for the most part, it just comes from like we're all 4 of us being just big music fans in general, and our personal tastes kind of always changing a little bit. The classics are always going to be the classics, like whatever that is to you, but I think like, for instance, on Inviting Light, we were listening to maybe some like more, I don't know, how do I put, like maybe some more approachable stuff or some lighter stuff, or just, like Scott and I love Wilco, you know what I mean? For one example. So, there was like, not that record sounds like a Wilco record by any means, but like you can definitely hear a bit of a different influence on that record. And I think because we made that record and it turned out the way it did, and it's probably got some of our most approachable moments musically or whatever, the new one's a direct response to the one we just did before that, right? So that's why I think in part that's why energy wise and musically it's angrier and it's more forceful and stuff like that, because we still have that side to us, and I think we've kind of shown that side to us maybe the most we ever have on this record. And again, it matches up with what the songs lyrically are about and stuff like that, right?
Sure. So what were you listening to that went into this one?
Man, like I've been listening to, one of my favorite records that came out during COVID was Ultra Mono by Idols. Love that band. They're just, I don't know, they came like to me kind of out of nowhere. My wife worked at a bar in Toronto for a while, and she came home one night. We were both bartenders at the time, and she came home one night after we were both done work, and she was like, you gotta check this band out. She was like, they were so lovely. Like the guys were so nice and they were so good. Like they just blew me away. And I checked them out and I couldn't believe it. And it was when Brutalism came out. And then we saw them the next time they came to town. They played Lee's Palace on Joy as an act of resistance. And it was like an incredible show. I was just up as close as I could to the front, like just studying what was going on. And then we saw them at the Danforth Music Hall in Toronto on the same record, like later on that album cycle. And it was no joke, like one of the closest things I've had to like a religious experience watching a band play live. And I've seen a lot of live shows over the years and I played a lot of live shows, but there was just something about this band and something about that show that like really informed like the power, I think, that I wanted to try to like harness in these songs. And not only them, I mean, like, you know, like there's like Mets from Toronto, or I love that band so much. And there's that's the same, like, to me, it's the same appeal. It's just such power and such force. And I knew that, you know, the songs and the ideas I was coming up with were, you know, I always trying to have like a catchy hook or whatever, like have some kind of like, you know, like pop sensibility to the writing that hopefully stays in your head. But I wanted it to be loud and I wanted it to be angry and just like have this power that maybe we hadn't had before sonically, you know? So writing the energy of everything was always, you know, in the forefront of my mind. And then when we made the record, like producing those songs and like how it kind of added up, like I wanted it to sound as close to what it would sound like live, you know, like I wanted to be able to pull all this stuff off live, but I knew that we had to stack it up in a certain way to reach that like kind of like mountaintop of power that I'd been thinking about for like a couple years at this point. And I think we pulled it off. Like I had so much fun making this record. And like it's probably the most fun I've ever had making a Flats record. And I think that's because, maybe only in part, but I know at least in part it was because the vision this time was like the clearest it's ever been. You know, like we kind of went in knowing like we want this record to punch people in the face, musically speaking. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Mission accomplished. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. I was talking to Stefan from Pop about this recently, and it kind of strikes me that you guys are in sort of similar situations in terms of you've been doing this for a long time. And it's one thing to be a 15, 16, 17-year-old kid playing punk rock in the basement or in a shitty club somewhere. But now you're a 35-ish guy, right? You're married, you got a house. This is your career, for want of a better, you know, and you're playing to kids who are probably the same age you were when you first started doing this, or when you were going to these shows and watching bands. And I'm wondering how you deal with that, how that changes your relationship with what you do and your audience in terms of, you know, looking out and seeing the sea of kids there now, you know?
I mean, to be honest, I think for the most part, our fans have grown with us, which is cool. I mean, there are still younger folks in the crowd, of course, but yeah, like, I don't know. Maybe it's just because now when we're, you know, on the road, like we see so many familiar faces we've seen at our shows forever, you know, and us starting when we were 14, 15 and now being the age we are, like it really feels like a lot of people have kind of like come along for the whole ride with us, which is cool. That helps a lot, just kind of like solidify like what we're doing like creatively, that like these people are still hanging out with us, you know? But in terms of like, trying to make a living off of music, I mean, it's fucking hard. It's extremely difficult. I mean, it gets harder and harder all the time. But at the end, in the end, like if you can jump through the hoops and you can kind of reach all those challenges head on, and I don't know, like do it with people that you love and respect, it makes it easier, because it is definitely a huge sacrifice of your time. You know, like you miss, I mean, I know you've heard this a million times, but like, you know, you miss the important things back home if you want to be a touring musician, because you're not playing a show at home every day. You are away all the time. And having those couple of years at home was honestly a blessing in disguise, I know, for me, and I think for a lot of folks in my position. But it also, then you miss the other side of things, right? There's always that. There's always this push and pull. So I think it's the main thing I've learned is like, if you can figure out what your balance is, what works the best for you. If it's going on tour for a month and then coming home for a month or two, and doing that all the time, or if it's kind of more like what we've been doing, works for us pretty well. You know, we just do like these short little spurts. So we'll do like, we're doing a weekend of shows in Western Canada this weekend coming up, you know,
Right.
and then, so we're doing Vancouver, Winnipeg, Edmonton, and Calgary. And then that's it for the month. And then next month, we're going to go to Florida. And then the month after that, we're going to go to the Northeast of the US. And in December, we're planning on in Ontario, Quebec. And like, that works for us. It's a lot more back and forth. And it's a lot more of the kind of, I mean, man, if only people knew how much work every single band, big or small, puts into every single show and tour and weekend of gigs, whatever. It's a lot of work, you know what I mean? Especially now with just travel being like the travel world just being so overwhelmed and whatever. Anyways, it's that works for us. You know what I mean? Just a little kind of peppering ourselves around a little bit, keeping it special. Yeah. I think it's important, but that only comes with time. I think like you have to try the different scenarios maybe to figure out what works best for you and for your personal life. You know what I mean? If you have a partner at home, if you have another job, because most people in bands do, you know, it's something you got to navigate and it takes time. But once you do, it can take 20 years, man. You know what I mean? It kind of did for us, you know, but at least for now, this way we're doing it is working pretty well.
So if you had known 20 years ago that you were still going to be doing this today, would you have chosen the name Flatliners?
No. Oh God, no. No way. No way. We chose it when we were like, you know, 14 or 15. Like we were at school one day and we were like, well, we need a name. So everyone's got to go home tonight and think of a name. Then I went to Blockbuster with my mom and saw the movie on the shelf. And I thought I didn't rent it, but I thought that sounds cool, but not cool enough to rent, I guess. So I went back to school the next day and told the dudes like, what about Flatliners? And they're like, yeah, it's okay. We're like, I guess that's our name. And we made a pact to never watch the movie because we don't want to. What if it sucks?
You've still never seen the movie?
We've never seen it. Yeah.
Well, there you go.
I mean, I've heard it's great from some people. I've heard it's terrible from other people. So
I don't know. 51% on IMDb or whatever it is. So, you know, what can you say?
I'm afraid to know. Yeah.
You have a better rating than the movie. Let's just say that.
Thank you.
All right, man. Listen, I know you got to talk to other people, so I'll just say thanks for your time. Thanks for all the music, and see you somewhere down the road.
Thank you, man. Great chatting with you.